Hello again, people. Today we are going to talk about the amazing voice acting performance of Christopher Judge as Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta. After completing God of War Ragnarok and putting an extra 20 hours of time into the side quests, it is clear to me that the time and dedication that was put into the characters of God of War are by far some of the best the gaming industry has to offer. God of War Ragnarok is filled with amazing voice talent, but today we are going to be focusing on the loud and proud Christopher Judge. Even though Kratos is a god, this is the most humane Kratos has ever been.
Why did you come here? Alone? Do you seek death?
No more than you.
Then why? Why? What is it you will not tell me?
Not just with body language, but also with the subtle changes in Judge's tone, pitch, his mannerisms. All of these show that Kratos is much more than an animal. The three original games laid the foundation of what Kratos was. These three games now serve as Kratos' origin story and how he was once an angry and violent person. To truly understand the weight of what we have now, we must understand what came before. God of War 2018, a soft reboot of the God of War series. Remember, soft reboot means that the old continuity is maintained, but there are many new characters and stories to tell. God of War opens with our Spartan warrior Kratos, but this time around he is accompanied by his son, Atreus. After God of War 3, Kratos has aged, become slightly more reserved, and more importantly, has found it in his heart to start a family again. Kratos' new wife Faye has blessed him with a child who has no idea of his parents' past or his lineage. Atreus has become a personal favorite character of mine alongside Kratos. Our story kicks off with the introduction of Baldur, the god of light. Baldur is demanding information from Kratos, to which Kratos is not only unsure what this information is, but also refuses to cooperate with him. Instead of elaborating, Baldur assaults Kratos multiple times in the hopes to goad him into a fight. Now at first, Baldur's actions seem to be a little bit dumb considering what he wants from Kratos. However, when you understand the fact that he wants to feel pain, and because of his mother he is unable to do so, this is the true reason why he wants to goad Kratos into a fight.
I'd hope that you, of everyone I'd faced, would finally make me feel something, but you can't.
Because he thinks if anyone can hit me hard enough to make me feel pain, it's this dude. From the get-go, we actually see that Kratos has come a little ways from God of War 3. Baldur assaults Kratos multiple times in the hopes to goad him into a fight, but Kratos shows an unrecognizable level of restraint that we're not used to seeing from him.
Leave my home.
And of course, the voice acting performance of Christopher Judge informs us about this new Kratos perfectly. Kratos speaks in a low and grisly voice, almost as if he's growling at Baldur. Kratos is not quick to violence, but he will give you what you deserve. After Kratos launches a vicious haymaker at Baldur, sending him flying back, Kratos looks back at his house, almost anticipating that Atreus is listening to his conversation. It's almost as if Kratos is afraid of what Atreus would think of him if he saw Kratos beating up someone who he thought was weaker than Kratos. We of course soon learn that Baldur is much more powerful, and he is a greater threat than Kratos anticipated. Throughout the fight, Baldur threatens to intrude Kratos' home and to interrogate whoever is inside for information. This reawakens Kratos' Spartan rage. It is very clear that Kratos cares deeply for his son, and naturally, it is his greatest fear to lose him. After the dispatching of Baldur, Kratos and Atreus begin their journey up the mountain. Atreus asks what happened to the man who knocked on their door. Kratos simply replies,
I did what had to be done.
We see echoes of Kratos' Spartan upbringing in his teachings. Kratos instructs Atreus to close his heart to the suffering of his enemies, as they would not feel for him. Quite frankly, with all the battles Kratos has fought against man and beast, this philosophy makes complete sense for him, but it may change as time goes on. You see, Kratos closes his heart to all forms of suffering, to the point where even if he could, he does not help people in need. There are a few times throughout the game where Atreus suggests that they should help people, but Kratos disagrees. The first emotional milestone in their journey is when Kratos is attacked by a group of men searching for food. They attack Kratos and Atreus at the same time, and Atreus is forced to defend himself by killing a man that grabbed him. It is clear that taking a human life is weighing on Atreus. Kratos reiterates his lesson.
Close your heart to it.
Atreus' mood does not improve. Kratos employs a child's level of manipulation, stating that Kratos will bring Atreus home if he cannot move past this. With a desire to continue with the adventure, Atreus pushes on. Not the healthiest of parental techniques, but don't worry, Kratos will pay for this later. Kratos' parenting is not all bad, as there are times where he genuinely seeks to teach Atreus how to critically think about things. Right before meeting Freya, they happened upon a boar.
It looked like it bounced off. Could the boar be magical?
What do you think?
It looked weirder than any boar I've ever seen.
He never specifically gives Atreus the answers. After shooting the boar, they happen across Freya, the Witch of the Woods. Upon meeting Freya, it is clear that Kratos has little to no trust whatsoever of her. The idea that another person who knows his past, despite Kratos' attempts to remain hidden for all these years, understandably puts him on edge. Both Danielle Biscuti and Christopher Judge give amazing performances, but Christopher Judge's performance encapsulates Kratos to a T. When Christopher Judge moves, he moves with purpose, just like Kratos would. When Freya identifies Kratos as a god, Kratos replies that it is not her business, almost as if Kratos is offended that Freya has called Kratos a god.
Or his own?
That is none of your concern.
Whenever Kratos speaks to someone, he stands up straight and strong, rarely breaking eye contact. This is honestly one of the reasons why mocap is so cool. You see, in a video game, you can be anything you want. Even if Christopher Judge doesn't look like Kratos, through his actions and his voice, he becomes the character. The computer-simulated graphics do the rest.
I always think physically bigger. So I try to stand bigger. I try to stand wider. And every time he moves, I want it to have a sense of purpose, that he's going to do something. Because Kratos, in my mind, doesn't ever do something by happenstance. There's always a definitive objective.
Freya is aware that Kratos is a god, but I would imagine she would kinda have an idea that he was actually also the ghost of Sparta. I would imagine that Kratos' existence would be known throughout many worlds, considering Kratos is responsible for essentially destroying an entire pantheon. This very past is one he has been trying to leave behind for a long time. Freya explains that Kratos must inform Atreus of his nature. This will be the first of many times that Kratos will be told that he must inform his son that he is a god. Kratos believes that if Atreus simply lives in ignorance, he will never have to suffer with all the baggage that accompanies being a god. Kratos and Atreus leave, and their journey continues. Their journey takes them to Alfheim, the realm of the elves. When Kratos and Atreus get to Alfheim, Atreus begins to hear voices in his head, most likely voices coming from the Well of Souls. Very little is said from Christopher Judge during this small scene. Most of his emotion comes from his eyes. Atreus is obviously in intense pain, but unfortunately Kratos does not understand and is unable to help Atreus, so he is left to look on in horror as his son is in pain and Kratos is powerless to stop it. Tensions begin to rise between Atreus and Kratos as Atreus claims that he can hear the voice of his mother. Kratos dismisses this notion. When Kratos enters the light of Alfheim, he begins to see visions of places that he has been and places that he will go. Atreus reaches into the light of Alfheim and pulls Kratos out, claiming that he has been there for a long time. For Kratos it was mere moments. Atreus feels very neglected by Kratos. On the journey back, Atreus asks Kratos if Faye was inside the light of Alfheim. Kratos says no. Still upset, Atreus accuses Kratos of not caring if Faye was in the light at all. Kratos immediately becomes upset by this accusation. Kratos explains to Atreus that he has his own way of grieving. Atreus feels relieved that Kratos not only does care about his mother and him, but also that only mere moments passed when he was in the light of Alfheim. Returning back to Midgard, they encounter a dragon. The dragon is so massive, to kill the beast, they must catch it unawares. Atreus opts into being a distraction. Kratos reluctantly agrees. After defeating the dragon, Atreus reminisces on their journey so far. The journey began with a simple deer hunt, and now they kill the undead, massive trolls, and now a dragon. Kratos explains that their accomplishments are the result of discipline and hard work. Atreus explains that it feels good to be strong. Kratos responds in almost a depressing tone.
I know. It's just, it feels good to be strong, you know?
Yes, I know.
Kratos does not deny the feeling that accompanies power. Power to do whatever you want, power to kill anyone who gets in your way. Kratos knows this feeling, but he also knows the consequences of becoming drunk off it. It is a natural human emotion to feel big and bad. Kratos was once this way, and based on his response, he fears turning down that path again. After reaching the peak of the tallest mountain in Midgard, we meet Mimir, the smartest man alive. A deal is struck to remove Mimir's head in exchange for his freedom and a way to Jotunheim. Before this, Mimir also explains to Kratos that he must be more forthcoming to Atreus. Kratos explains that there is much about his past that he would keep from Atreus. Mimir offers a fair counter in the form of a snappy comeback, implying that Kratos cares more about his secrets than the well-being of his son. Kratos proceeds to cut off Mimir's head. Up until this point, Kratos has expressed nothing but displeasure for the gods of all kinds. He finds the very nature of the gods to be intrinsically bad. Upon Mimir's resurrection, he lets slip that the witch is in fact Freya, the queen of the Vanir. The lighting of this scene is the icing on the cake that ties this shot together, but the majority of the emotion comes from Christopher Judge's mocap performance.
You did not think it important to tell me.
Christopher Judge speaks in a noticeably angry tone as he essentially asks why Freya did not explain that she is a god, even having figuring out that Kratos was one himself. Kratos does not like to be taken for a ride, in a manner of speaking. I doubt that it was done with malicious intent, but it can be assumed that Kratos sees this situation as Freya using her superior information against him. At least that's the way he sees it. Kratos in a way feels like Freya has the upper hand, and due to his past experiences with other gods, immediately assumes that Freya will use this information against him. This whole time Kratos thought that Freya was an ally against the gods. Now that he realizes that she is a god herself, Kratos fears that he has once again been deceived by a god. Despite her previous actions, he still holds to the fact that no god or goddess can be trusted. Kratos has taken this withheld information as an act of deception from Freya. Mimir attempts to quell Kratos' anger by subconsciously comparing Freya's wish for privacy with his own, which unfortunately doesn't work. Kratos at this point in the story is wary of the Norse pantheon of gods. Freya's previous actions in the scene did not help her case in this situation either. The way that Freya was upset about the mistletoe arrows, and the way that she leans towards Atreus almost in rage, has Kratos on edge as it is.
These arrows are dangerous. They're wicked. You find any more, you destroy them, understand? Do you understand? Say it!
And now with this new information that she is in fact a god, this sends Kratos over the edge, so to speak. Kratos' anger can also be equated to his ignorance of the internal politics between the Vanir and the Aesir gods. Kratos is familiar with the gods only of his own lands, and therefore cannot even imagine a world where gods do not strive for the affection of mortals. It is not until the many stories of Mimir, and of course the time she took care of Atreus, would Kratos realize the error of his reaction, and actually apologize, in his own way. But like I said earlier, Kratos takes this new information as an act of deception from Freya. Kratos storms out of the room and decides to take his anger out on a wall. This may seem like a childish display of anger from Kratos, and yes, I would agree it is pretty childish, but you see, in Kratos' mind, he has been deceived by yet another god.
Why did you do that?
We cannot trust her.
Because she's a god?
Have I taught you nothing, boy?
The anger Kratos feels is most likely left over from the anger he felt from Ares, or Athena. The anger is so intense, he finds it hard to control himself. The Magni and Modi fight does not have too many character moments from Kratos, other than the fact that Kratos does not fear them in any way. Kratos' actions would dictate that he would rather go on the defensive than outright kill them both. Kratos is inevitably forced to kill Magni when Atreus charges at Modi. Atreus is thrown into a rage, and because of this, his sickness returns. Remember when I said Kratos' parenting choices will come back to haunt him? Well, here it is. When Atreus killed that human, it was very clear that he was struggling to emotionally cope with the situation. Kratos ignores Atreus' grief and forces him to push on. This has subconsciously thrown Atreus down a path where he does not feel compassion whatsoever. Atreus does, however, still feel a great deal of anger, and this causes him to become sick once again. But because of Kratos' threats to end the journey, Atreus refuses to receive treatment for his sickness. I would also wager that Kratos' pride was stopping him from initially going to see Freya as well. Time passes and Modi reappears to seek revenge for his brother. Kratos initially finds it difficult to move with 10,000 volts of electricity surging through his body. That is, until Modi makes the unwise decision of shield bashing Kratos' only son. Atreus' rage seemingly overtaxes his body and causes Atreus to pass out. Afterwards, Kratos launches Modi across the room, and he flees. Atreus loses consciousness, and now Kratos has no choice but to take him to Freya. Back to Christopher Judge's performance. Upon riding the lift up to Freya's house, Kratos has moved a short distance, but he is completely out of breath. He begins to hyperventilate. The fear is starting to set in. The fear of uncertainty, the fear of Asgard's retribution, and more importantly, the fear of losing the only family he has left is completely overtaking Kratos' mind. Paying close attention to Kratos' face, we can tell that he is desperately trying to keep calm, but he is absolutely having trouble. He begins to pace back and forth as the lift seems to take twice as long as it did before. Body language is an important part of acting, and at times, it is more powerful than expressions or voice. Kratos continuously looks down at Atreus, hoping that his condition will improve. But much like the voices in Alfheim, Kratos is not equipped to deal with this situation. Christopher Judge fantastically captures this distressed father who can't bear to lose his child again.
Freya! Open the door! We need your help! Woman, do you hear me?
Understandably, Freya simply assumes that Kratos is still upset about her being a god. But of course, after hearing that Atreus has fallen ill, she opens the door. Kratos blames himself for Atreus' condition. Kratos pleads for Freya's help in such a pained tone, it's almost as if he is afraid of the answer.
Will you help me?
Of course.
Of course, Freya says yes, and she tells Kratos that she will need something that can only be found in the land of the dead, and that Kratos' axe will have no effect on its inhabitants. Freya describes Helheim as a place where no magic in all the 9 realms can light a flame. So now Kratos must return home and find a way to fight the creatures of Helheim. This also leads us to one of the best moments in God of War history. Right before leaving, Kratos attempts to apologize for the way he acted, but Freya stops him. Being married to the liar king of the gods, she understands why Kratos would not trust one. She assures him that she will keep him safe, a mother's promise. Kratos quickly turns, gives a brief nod, and leaves. After this scene, the bond between these two characters has never been stronger, and they understand each other more so than ever. Now let's get into the real meat of this sequence. Oh yeah, you know what time it is, it's time for the Blades of Chaos. The sky grows black and thunder crashes throughout Midgard. This moment actually can have 2 meanings, a literal one and a metaphorical one. It is presumed that at this moment Thor has received the news that Magni has died and is currently lashing out at Modi for allowing this to happen. Hence all the thunder and lightning. But also, this dark and stormy sky is a reminder of Kratos' past. The way he left his old home of Olympus. The landscape of Greece is dark and stormy, cleansed in chaos. Either way, it sets the tone tremendously. On Kratos' journey back home, he sees Athena once again. Whether you think this version of Athena is just an apparition or a vision in Kratos' head, the end result is just as effective. A literal ghost from Kratos' past has come back to haunt him, to terrorize him into thinking that he will always be a monster. The effect this vision has on Kratos is seen clearly. Kratos is left to his own devices during this long boat ride, almost as if he is meditating, trying to get himself back into the mindset he needs to be able to use the blades properly. The old and cracked, poorly kept blades of chaos lie at Kratos' feet. Kratos rubs his arms where we know that there are still the burn marks for when he was initially given the blades of chaos, as they were directly burned to his skin as a sign of loyalty to Ares.
There's nowhere you can hide, Spartan. Put as much distance between you and the truth as you want. Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. You will always be a monster.
There is one word that I discern when I see Kratos' face in this scene, and that word is acceptance. Kratos is in a whole new world, but look at what he's doing. Killing gods, using the blades of chaos. Now of course to us, Kratos has come a long way from God of War 1, but unfortunately for some people that growth is difficult to see to those who undertake it. Christopher Judge's voice acting relays that Kratos believes himself that he will always be a monster, but he finds comfort in knowing that now he kills for the people he cares about.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
Upon returning to Tyr's temple, Brock takes an incredible interest in the Blades of Chaos, but Kratos turns to face Brock, keeping his blades on his back, almost as if he is embarrassed to have them with him. Brock begins to show genuine interest in Atreus' well-being, and offers to lend Kratos his aid. Thankful for the offer, Kratos simply explains that Brock and Sindri's work on his weapons will be enough. Speaking of weapons, let's briefly talk about the Blades of Chaos, and more importantly, why Kratos even has them. Some people believe that Kratos should instead be using the Blades of Exile, as those are the ones that Athena gave him at the end of God of War 3. However, if you remember, Kratos and Athena were not on good terms at the end of 3, so most likely she took them back or destroyed them. The Blades of Athena were also destroyed when Kratos entered the river Styx. However, Kratos was given the title as the God of War, so that would mean that all of Ares' possessions would be given to Kratos, including the Blades of Chaos. So therefore, these would be the only blades Kratos would know the location of and be able to use post God of War 3. Also, as a side note, the Blades of Chaos being used here just makes more sense thematically. The blades that were once used to accidentally kill his old family will now be used to protect his new one. Also, can I just say that it's so cool that Freya is like, no fire in all the 9 realms can burn there, so Kratos has to use the power from his own pantheon to survive in Helheim. I just think that's pretty cool. While Atreus is coming to, he overhears a conversation between Freya and Kratos. She tells the story of her son, who we later learned is Baldur. She explains that her fear of losing her son is what made her son resent her. Freya further tries to convince Kratos to tell Atreus about what he is. Knowing that Atreus is going to be okay, Kratos appears to be in a more vulnerable mood. Kratos describes that being a god is a curse, and that Atreus is now cursed as well. Atreus wakes up and immediately reassures his father that he is well and he will not become sick again.
I'm better now.
I see that.
It won't happen again. I promise.
You see that it does not.
Kratos' response could easily be understood as a coarse one. However, the way that Christopher Judge delivers the lines gives us a different meaning, ordering Atreus not to get sick again. However, he says it in such a soft tone, it is clear that there is no anger or authoritative fuel behind the statement. It is Kratos in his own way saying, "Don't ever scare me like that again." This passing of dialogue is actually genius because it doesn't breach the relationship standards between Kratos and his son, but also it shows the audience that even though he doesn't say it outright, he is relieved that Atreus is healthy again. After Atreus awakens, he appears more quiet than he was before. Kratos is not one for subtlety and does not like the idea of people hiding something from him. He explains to Atreus that he does not understand what he is saying. Atreus explains that he believes that Kratos thinks that Atreus is cursed because he is not naturally as strong as Kratos. Atreus feels like Kratos never wanted him as a son, and Kratos' reaction is spot on. Any normal person would turn to face Atreus and say, "No, son, of course I wanted you. You're my son. I love you." Kratos does not see the emotion behind Atreus' words. In Kratos' eyes, Atreus is acting on incorrect information, and Kratos simply sees this as a moment for him to correct his son. Atreus claims that he now knows the truth. Kratos says the same thing twice, but because of Christopher Judge's facial performance, we can tell that Kratos is thinking something different both times he said it.
The truth.
The first is Kratos realizing that Atreus has this warped view of what is true. Kratos absolutely values honesty, and it's no surprise considering how many people throughout his life had lied to him. Kratos understands that the truth is powerful, it cannot be denied. Those who do not adhere to the truth will suffer for it. Kratos looks forward, and in his mind I can only imagine the memories, the anguish and the bloodshed that came from years where Kratos himself had a crooked perspective of the truth.
The truth.
Fear of what might happen if he does tell Atreus becomes overshadowed by the fear of what will happen if he does not tell him. Finally, Kratos tells Atreus the truth.
But the truth is, I was born a god, and so were you.
Kratos then asks Atreus if he has anything to say, almost as if he is overwhelmed with nervousness about Atreus' reaction. Notice how he stops talking, waits only a few seconds, and then asks Atreus to respond, almost as if he is too impatient to let Atreus process this information by himself. Because of this, Atreus struggles to respond, so he asks a question. The range of emotions that pass through Kratos' face in this scene are insane. I would also like to point out that Kratos is not directly looking at Atreus. Kratos looks up in anxiousness awaiting his son's response. He expects Atreus to ask him the pressing questions like, "Why do you hate God so much if you are one?" But instead, Atreus, being a small child, simply asks, "Can I turn into an animal?" Kratos' face shifts from anxiety to genuine confusion. His brow then begins to furrow, implying that he was almost annoyed that Atreus would ask such a random question. It's almost as if Kratos is thinking to himself, "Did this boy just ask me if he can turn into an animal? What the hell is he thinking?" After the bandage is ripped off, they are right back into their regular mannerisms. Atreus seems ecstatic after learning about his nature. Kratos then turns to Atreus. Kratos explains that being a god can entail a lifetime of anguish. This is the curse that he spoke of. Kratos begins to speak more openly about what being a god is about. Every god is unique, and in time, Atreus' powers will reveal themselves. Kratos believes that the worst of it is behind him, but unfortunately, Kratos is about to learn what happens when a little boy learns that he is a god. We're gods. We can do whatever we want. A phrase that is one of many red flags that Kratos will ignore almost as if he is mistaking them for Spartan war flags. After many minutes of adventure, Atreus loses his mother's knife. Kratos bestows upon him a new knife, one he made when Atreus was born. Kratos explains that Atreus' responsibility is greater than that of any man, and that Atreus must be better than Kratos. Kratos' desires are clear, however, he is missing a fatal detail if he wants Atreus to be better. Atreus cannot learn to be better on his own. Kratos must grow as a person if he is to properly teach Atreus how to be a better god. After this scene, I detect that Kratos is beginning to feel a sense of pride in Atreus' abilities. After accessing Tyr's vault, Kratos decides to share a drink of Lemnian wine with his son. This sharing of a candid moment between Kratos and Atreus is possibly the first time we have heard Kratos laugh. This feeling that Kratos has is possibly one that he hasn't felt in a long time. Companionship, family, love. This warmness is most likely why Kratos does not see the change that is happening within Atreus. Atreus now asks the big questions. Why did Kratos leave? Why does he hate the gods? Etc. Atreus asks Kratos about the people he killed in his past. Atreus makes the assumption that Kratos only killed those who were deserving.
And you're good. You only killed those deserving, right?
Yes.
We actually don't need to have played the original games to know that Kratos is lying here when he says yes. You can tell that Kratos rarely lies considering he's so bad at it. His body language clearly projects that he is being untruthful. Kratos values honesty, but he hasn't had a family since meeting Faye, and now that she's gone, Kratos only has Atreus left. It's a lapse in Kratos' judgment, yes, but at this point Kratos would do anything to maintain his feeling of companionship. Mimir interjects with a line claiming that Kratos should not decide that he was worthy to judge all he killed as deserving. Atreus begins to address Mimir as head. Kratos thinks nothing of this. They meet Sindri again, and naturally he begins to complain about his brother. Atreus loses his patience immediately and begins to yell at Sindri. Kratos finally begins to break his silence about Atreus' behavior.
Why did you speak to the dwarf like that?
Aren't you sick of hearing about him and his brother?
Of course. But it serves nothing to make an enemy of him.
He should know the truth, even if it hurts.
Kratos explains that Atreus' behavior was needless and unkind. Kratos argues that even though Atreus' words had truth, they would potentially make an enemy of Sindri. Let's hope that doesn't happen, right? There are actual fan theories that say that Atreus drinking the wine is what's causing this behavior. The bad wine could be a factor, but I think it's more so the fact that Atreus is becoming drunk with power. Atreus knows all about the gods of the realm, so after finding out that he is one, I'm sure that his mind is running wild with the things that he could do. Imagine if you read Superman comics your whole life, and one day you woke up with all of Superman's powers and skills. Accompany that with Atreus' age, and we have a recipe for disaster. During the climb up the mountain, Atreus becomes more and more offensive. Kratos is beginning to have trouble controlling Atreus' actions. This all climaxes with the introduction of Modi. Modi returns, beaten and battered from Thor after learning of Magni's death. Kratos orders Atreus not to kill Modi. Modi's insults toward Faye anger Atreus, and he stabs Modi right in the throat. Kratos grabs Atreus, and he attempts to explain to him that he should only kill in defense of himself and not as an indulgence. Atreus is completely unreceptive to this. For the first time in his life, Kratos sees what so many others have seen. In Atreus' eyes, Kratos sees a killer, someone who kills any and everyone who gets in his way, a tyrant who uses his own power to achieve his own goals, no matter who gets in his way. Kratos sees the part of himself within Atreus, and it damn near terrifies him.
There are consequences to killing a god.
Why? How do you know?
Kratos snaps, and so does Atreus. Atreus asks why, and how would Kratos know this? Kratos demands the respect from his son, and the conversation ends on a sour note. Atreus is aware that there are things that Kratos is not telling him, but of course, Kratos refuses to answer. Kratos has told Atreus a part of the truth. He has not told Atreus everything, and because of this, there is a wedge that is causing tension in their relationship. After an incredibly exciting sequence with a rematch with Baldur, Kratos and Atreus end up back in Helheim.
You will listen to me and not speak a word. I am your father, and you, boy, are not yourself. You are too quick to temper. You are rash, insubordinate, and out of control. This will not stand.
Kratos gives his son a well-deserved talking to. Kratos demands that Atreus turn away from this path that he has chosen. It is not too late for Atreus to be a good person. Kratos says to Atreus, "We are here because of you," which has multiple meanings. Here in Helheim, yes, but also in general, because Kratos would not be here in Midgard if Atreus did not exist. Everything that Kratos does now and in the future is for Atreus' well-being, and Atreus should know that.
We are here because of you, boy. Never forget that.
The culmination of Kratos' journey is upon us as the final battle with Baldur is here. Baldur is injured by the mistletoe within Atreus' quiver. He could be killed. After their battle drawn to a close, Kratos holds Baldur by the throat, ready to enact his revenge for hunting him all this time. However, due to Freya's protest, and Atreus reiterating the words Kratos spoke in regards to Modi, he spares Baldur's life. Baldur is hell-bent on killing Freya for taking away his ability to feel, and unfortunately Freya is willing to throw her life away to give Baldur the revenge that he wants. However, Kratos refuses to let this happen. Baldur's story is tragic, and his anger is understandable. However, it would seem that there is no forgiveness in his heart. Yes, maybe more could have been said, maybe if given time, Baldur could learn to forgive his mother. But no. In all honesty, if you are so angry that you are choking your mother and her saying "I love you" makes you squeeze harder, then I would say you're pretty much long gone at that point. Kratos' eyes are filled with nothing but disappointment. Despite Baldur's actions, Kratos truly seems like he doesn't want to do this.
The cycle ends here. Must be better than this.
Kratos tries to console Freya. He explains that Baldur chose this path and in a way wanted his own death. He chose this path and he refused to turn away even though he had every chance to do so. Those words fall on deaf ears as Freya is only concerned about one thing. Kratos killed her son. Unfortunately, the cycle of vengeance has twisted back into Kratos' direction, not to Kratos' surprise. Freya lashes out at Kratos, telling him that he is an animal and he will never change. Kratos denies this, because he has changed. He didn't kill Baldur for revenge, but to save Freya's life. His nature has changed. With the risk of Freya doing so herself, Kratos begins to tell Atreus the truth, the whole truth this time. He tells Atreus where he is from. He admits to Atreus that he has killed many people, innocent and guilty. This whole time leading up to this moment, Kratos has been looking away from his son and talking about his past, refusing to make eye contact. But now, Kratos turns to face Atreus and confronts his reaction, giving Atreus time to respond. Kratos killed his own father. Atreus was already aware of this, as he saw a vision of Zeus and Kratos in Helheim. Atreus chose not to elaborate on what he saw. Atreus already was able to piece together the details himself. He's a pretty smart kid. After Kratos comes clean, Atreus can't help but feel despair over the stories of the gods. He fears that the fate of Baldur and Freya will be the same fate as himself and his father, but Kratos reassures him. They will be the gods they choose to be. They must be better. Kratos denies his old nature. He denies the labels others have put onto him. He understands that he has done terrible things, but he will be a better person. for the sake of his son, and for the sake of the world. Kratos' story has excelled more so than anyone could have thought possible. Imagine my surprise when I realized that we live in a world where Kratos, the ghost of Sparta from the God of War series, has become one of the most well-written characters in video game history. God of War 2018 could have been another power fantasy about killing gods and monsters, but it is so much more than that. Christopher Judge dedicated this performance to his own children. Even though beforehand he didn't know anything about video games, he still gave 100% of his effort in this performance as Kratos.
A lot of this performance, for me, is a love letter to my kids. It's an apology.
He took his very real living pain and channeled that into his Kratos performance. Kratos is a challenging character to show emotion with because of who he is. He is a battle-hardened Spartan warrior. He has fought many bloody wars, he has ripped through countless enemies, and has lost many people who he cared about. To go from this completely jaded and stoic to openly expressing yourself to what you want requires the most subtle of movements in one's face. The mocap work that Sony Santa Monica and Christopher Judge did to bring Kratos to life was impeccable and crucial to tie this soft reboot together. And the best part about this is we're not even done yet, as we have an entirely new game to talk about. The recently released God of War Ragnarok continues Kratos' progression as he pushes to become a better person. I have to say, almost every piece of dialogue in God of War Ragnarok has purpose to it. No time is wasted. That's also why I will be dedicating an entirely separate video to God of War Ragnarok's story, where we will continue to talk about Kratos, the God of War, and his fate come Ragnarok. Thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye. See you next time.